I bought a small property in Yarmouth and renovated it, and I had a store. And a woman came into my shop and she asked me to come to her house because she said she wants her house to feel like the inside of my store. And that one woman, that one comment, and she said, I love coming here because I can get a little something for myself and a little something for my soul, she said. And I was like, well, there must be something to that.
Welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we're speaking with Nicola Manganello, owner and principal designer of Nicola's Home in Yarmouth, Maine, who's doing very, very well in business. You seem to be from the outside. Can you tell us more about that? Yeah. But seems to be doing very well. I've shot some of your stuff, and it all is very, very rich in a like, it's very experiential, and it just so obvious that someone's put so much thought into all these pieces that sing a harmony together. That my personal taste goes towards a stark minimalism, and it's very rare that I can interact with something as rich as what you do and be able to appreciate it. And I think that richness takes more talent than the stark in some ways.
Well, that's an interesting take on that.
Because you have so many more pieces to communicate. And if one's off tune.
Less is more. And I think it's harder to achieve that look.
The minimalist look?
Yeah, I think it's hard
I wonder
to
if
make
it's because you naturally go towards the more rich and you just can, it's your natural talent. And I think that going minimalist is easier because I can do it.
Yeah.
And it's what appeals to me emotionally.
Yeah.
So I wonder, because I hear people say that less is more, and it's harder because there's fewer pieces, so you have to have more thought and more precision in that piece. But I don't. I can hear people say that, but I don't feel it.
I think I lean more towards the more, just because it sort of envelops you a little bit more. I'm into comfort.
It's a warmer blanket.
Right. Broken in things, and I tend to lean towards having those things that I love around me, and so it just kind of makes the space more comfortable for me.
Right.
And I think people that hire me probably feel the same way,
Right.
So it's like,
I wonder if they
I recently did a project with Kevin Brown, and it was a contemporary house, which was a stretch for me, but I loved doing it. It was challenging.
Really?
Yeah, very challenging.
Okay, let me get through this intro.
Yeah, I know.
We're going to talk about that. Okay, well, don't miss Nicola Manganello's Design Theory in the upcoming March issue, 2023 issue of March, April. I am so good at intros.
Yeah.
Woo, knocking this one out of the park. March, April 2023 issue of Maine Home Design. Thank you for coming into the studio today on this incredibly hot November day. What's the date today? Like the 5th or 6th, somewhere in there?
I think so. Yeah.
And it's hot. It's like almost 80 out.
Yeah.
So whatever. But anyways, we'll get to these questions later. So you naturally gravitate towards a very rich aesthetic, and you're hyper talented at what you do.
Oh, thanks.
And I gravitate towards this minimalist aesthetic, and I'm not an interior designer, and I'm not talented at that. But it's what, like, when I go into a place that's stark minimal, it's like my baseline of like, this is me.
Yeah.
But there's also like the ones I go into that are rich, that are not done well, just they sing in such disharmony, so much harder.
Yeah.
But then the ones that I've been in that are yours are like, oh, okay, so maybe I could do this.
Yeah.
Like if I was married to someone who really wanted that and could produce it in our home, I'd be like, you got this. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But so you did a minimalist home recently, or more minimalist.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about that.
Well, we took it was a more traditional sort of colonial style home. And it was like traditional in the front, party in the back kind of thing going on. So they wanted it to be unexpected off the backside. And so it was contemporary. So they hired Kevin Brown as the architect and me as the interior designer.
I think I've seen photos of the back of that home.
We haven't shot it yet.
Oh, okay.
He's done this before, I think, which is why I think they hired him, because I think he's very good at it. But he also was a great collaborator. We drew the interior fit up, which is a little bit what's unusual about Nicola's home is we do interior architecture as well. So it was more of a collaborative effort, he was a pleasure to work with. But it helped me sort of stretch into that uncomfort zone for me, which is, minimal design,
Right.
So it's like, and the husband, it was sort of husband and wife. He wanted contemporary. She wanted more what I brought to the table because I did a home, one of her older homes for her. And so it was trying to blend that contemporary with the warmth of this type of style that I like to do.
Right.
And I think at some point maybe we have to have you shoot this one.
Hey, I'll be all over it. So you just let me know.
Yeah.
So how were those interactions, those moments? What did they look like? And how did you manage the all right, I'm gonna move the slider on the gradient from rich to more minimal. How did you do that while keeping Nicola Manganello's aesthetic in there?
I think it had to do more with there's a lot of plaster. We did a sort of what they call level 5 finish in the sheetrock plaster world.
I've seen those
I know
a lot recently.
Yeah, so it's sort of a plaster finish, which sort of undulates. White is, it's just not white. There's many levels of white. So, but it was like plaster walls, and then where we did use wood, it was done in a very warm way. So we brought a lot of white oak in, but we treated it very differently, and we layered in washes on it. And it was just sort of how we did all the woodwork off of the white is what made it. And then giving space for artwork and things that would help add character and color, furniture, furnishings.
How
and
did
things
the
like that.
the floors and the wall treatment in a space like that? How'd that end up?
We did sort of a washed white oak, but we
on
sort
the floor?
on the floor.
Now, washed white oak, is that like a kind of like that grayish kind of?
This one's more warm, I think. So this was a more warm. The whole house ended up being much warmer than I think we had intended it to be, which was welcoming to everybody. It evolved. It was a process. We did the job with Wright Ryan. They're fabulous to work with. So it was always good that what I love about working with them on building projects is they sort of give you examples of everything. So it's like you have an idea, they mock it up. And that's kind of a nice thing to be for owners who they're not like us. We see things, before they're done. We know what we want them to be. We can envision, and so that sort of, effort it's more expensive, but really helpful to the homeowner. So especially when you're trying to talk them into doing something that they are not into so much.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's become a pretty intense fascination of mine to understand what creativity is and how that process works for different people, and what part of the process they find their identity in. It's kind of my belief that the whole of society and humanity participates in creativity, that there's parts of the process that people like myself or like you or architects or artists or anything else, they have a far more open disposition just in general to experience that is doing some sort of infill of a map of reality that they're able to reference in solving problems for people who do not relate to the world as a map of reality that's filled in with experience that they can then reference to connect A to B in problem solving and give them the solution. Yeah. To me, there's this odd thing, like with photography, you're just setting up a camera and you're pointing it at something, you light it and you move on. There's kind of this idea that that's just what happens from the perspective of the photographer, because you're so immersed in that process that you kind of think like I'm a hack and anyone's going to be able to do this. And pretty soon everyone else is going to learn that you can do this. And the pay for photographers is going to take a dive because all the technical stuff is getting better. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. This imposter syndrome that
Yeah.
for me is a real thing that I personally struggle with. But then I realize when I try and describe what I'm doing, the depth and the intricacy of it and the interconnectedness and all of my life experience that feeds into those decisions that are made and why I make those decisions.
Yeah.
And there's that part that the more open and drawn to the novel as a psychological disposition, when I interact with something that is new to me, I experience a positive emotional reaction. Other people, when they interact with something new, their first reaction is one of maybe defense or maybe to think, I don't know what this is. We need to assess it before we just walk into it and experience it or whatever else. And I find that the people who are doing the actual objectifying of experience or objectifying of chaos into some kind of order that they can hand to a client. So the more minimalist house you had, it challenges you to operate in a little bit different manner than you like I designed the house and I do the interior and it is fully Nicola Manganello. This is easy for you at this point, I imagine. Like you can stamp these things out if you phone it in. And if you phone it in, it's still going to look like an incredible Nicola Manganello home. You know how to do that time and time and time again. The danger is that you just start to do that and you just run your brand into the ground. Is like, this is all I can do. But if you keep interacting with that novel, it can grow and change, and it can start to take on these more, minimalist forms that might work well, but still have that flavor. But those who have that experience psychologically have that ability to pull references from just an infinite amount of interactions that they've had throughout their life to inform why they're making these creative decisions. To me, this is how I'm understanding it. Does any of that land with you and connect and help you?
No, I
not
well
help
said,
you as
by
much,
the way.
but like, does it like bing, these are bells going off and I'm seeing that too?
I think you can totally tell sort of this a phoned in, as you state,
because I can
design.
phone things in now.
And I think that,
and it's a weird experience to get there. Because from
but
the beginning,
you've been doing it for so long,
right? You
have all this experience to pull on, and no idea is like completely unique, So it's like it's pieces of things I've seen in the past that I'm like, oh, I love that, and that, and you take it and you so it's sort of like borrowed, if you will, but at the same time, they're not all phoned in moments. I mean, I think it's like at the last second of the decision made, there's something new that's happening.
Right.
It's coming together new for this client and I think if you're, good at what you do, you're helping them envision and see their home as it's going to be when it's completed. But, I mean, they want it to represent their personality too, which is what makes it completely, for me, a new experience, because everyone's different and all their homes, they want it to reflect their own family function, personality, so it's like that to me is a brand new experience every time. What doesn't change every time is how you have to manage expectations and help them both get on the same page. If there's two people, usually I'm working for two people building a home or designing a home. Sometimes I've done some commercial, but that's a little.
I bet it's a lot easier designing and building a home for a single person.
Yeah, it is because there's only one person to convince to do something. But sometimes it's like being a therapist, a little bit. There's a lot of that.
I can't imagine how much an interior designer or an architect has to go through with. Even like the guys running the paint counter at Home Depot.
Yeah. No, it is. It's your home. It's a very personal space, and they're going to be in it for a long time. Usually these homes, oftentimes I always hear the client, this is our forever home, so that's a lot of responsibility, So
with people that you've shared spaces with long term, how has this, from a traditional point of view, the woman decorates the home, the man pays for it. This is a traditional view, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I am not a traditional man.
Mhm.
I have much more of an aesthetic opinion, and I have very feminine goals for my life that are more relationally oriented,
Okay.
which that's just who I am.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm working towards. I
Yeah.
want, and I don't find as solid emotional income from my identity for what I actually do for work as much as some other people might.
Mhm.
And that's not to say it's right or wrong. It's just where I fall on the spectrum, right?
Mhm.
And so when it comes to my home, I'm not the husband who is like, sweetie, if that's what you want, I don't care. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this needs to be over here and
Right.
that needs to be over there.
Right.
Now, my wife is not as much the female that has to have it her way, but
Yeah.
she definitely does not appreciate just being pushed over by highly critical
Yeah.
and driven Trent.
Yeah.
And so that's made a lot of issues. Luckily, we're both pretty much on the same minimalist
Yeah.
thing to a large degree.
Yeah.
But when there, it can start to, for her, it can start to feel like this is just not my home.
Yeah.
You just control everything, and
Yeah.
and so from your perspective, have you ever run into that issue as far as this is my home and I am the incredibly well-known Nicola Manganello and you will accept what I design into here? Because I've talked to other architects and everything else
Yeah.
who are like, they're at home like, I'm so-and-so and I'm designing this and you're telling me it's wrong and you have no training. And it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, from working with clients in their homes to, a renovation I just recently did on my own home, I mean, I think that it's times have changed significantly because I am working for a lot of couples where the woman is actually paying the bills. And he's actually, it's like reverse roles. Oftentimes when this is happening, it seems like their responsibilities inside of their relationship are reversed a little bit too. So the decision making is also a little reversed. It seems more so that way. I mean, oftentimes I'm working for people that are both hugely successful and are bringing strong dynamics to the table and strong opinions. And, I feel like at this point after doing it, and I'll just say over 25 years, we won't have to say
we'll just leave it like
how
that.
much over, but that was the hardest thing for me, was coming to the table with people that were successful in their own right and convincing them of something that I believed in. That was I had to be definitive in my decision making. This took a long time for me, so
interacting with high level position people that are in a high management or ownership CEO type to present design ideas, you had to be just as aggressive in many ways as them.
Basically I think it's like it was something I had to learn to overcome.
Do you had to like match their confidence in a way?
Which was not at all my thing.
I've come to recently realize there's a lot. It upsets me that the word appropriation has such a bad connotation. Because for one, I'm a highly open person as a psychological disposition, but I was raised in a highly conservative, aka conscientious, religious culture and, in general, temperance type of society, right?
Yeah.
And I appropriated to my way of doing things all these conscientious ways of behavior. So you wake up early, you have to-do lists, you get things done, and these were not my nature. But through just appropriating them over time through that culture, in many ways, it's the combination of those things that I think has helped make me able to achieve what I've wanted to achieve. Now, if I were more naturally conscientious and I were, just these two, raving liberal artist parents, right? Have this kid that comes out and he's like tucking his shirt in every day and cleaning his room in the morning before he leaving, making his bed, and they were looking at this kid like, whose kid is this? This is weird. But if that kid had that personality, but then also was able to appropriate these more liberal or open ways of looking at things, the changing your perspective to understand things more, involving yourself in new experiences to fill out your understanding of the world, to gain more wisdom in that way. That would be an appropriation of something that's, you did not form this. It's not natural to you.
Yeah.
But you say, this is a value and I will use it. In the same way, your natural personality was not, I'm not going to come with all this confidence and like, but you have to like, all right, this is how this guy plays his game, and he's not going to change it, or she's not going to change it for interacting with me.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to change my game to operate with them. And you're going to have to sense that and change it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
No, it comes up actually in every job.
Yeah.
And in some way, it's revisiting that moment in the past for me when it was like a light bulb moment where I'm like, I have to get on the same level somehow. What is that? They've hired me to do a job. So I have to go back in my head. It's like, they think I'm talented enough to do their house. So they've hired me to do it. Now they have to let me do my job. So, okay. So then there's that.
So there's are you saying that there's just that expectation? These people are going to, they're just going to open the coffers and their decision making is going to be off. And
that's never the case.
You realize,
wait
a minute.
No, that's never the case. They challenge, they're always challenging what you're bringing to the table. And you have to like find new ways of expressing, now we can render a room to look completely realistic before we even build it, so it's like these tools to convince them of your vision. Helpful. Not everyone can do it, but I think that it's over time, just for like new designers, the confidence you build with both good and bad experiences.
Oh, bad experiences are the best.
Those are the ones you learn the most from. Yeah. And they're, for some people it's devastating. I know why people change directions in life and careers because some things can seem like, one day to be devastating. Criticism, just failure, financial or otherwise, it's like, you've got to like work through those things. It's not given.
Why not? Hey, so what's the hardest thing you've gone through that has made you stronger on the other side of it, that you've been able to get past?
That's a loaded question. I know,
that's
right?
Why
You're
I paused before it. I was like, why not?
Why not?
Let me share mine.
Yeah, you start, and then I think I know which one it is for me. But
I'm a selfish a-hole, and I can be horrible to live with. And when I don't want to sound arrogant, but I'm arrogant. And I'm opinionated. I'm arrogant. I'm critical, and I know that I have some intelligence and talent, and it's not easy to step back from that and be humble and not think of myself constantly. And that pushed my marriage to a breaking point because of my lack of, in some ways there's intelligence can, if you can't get out of your own way, that intelligence becomes like a gravitational force that just turns you into a black hole.
Yeah.
There's a difference between intelligence and the humility that can bring wisdom, it's like intelligence is a engine or gas, and then wisdom is the opposite. And they have to work together through experience and humility and everything else. And it was not until I kind of realized, so I interviewed a guy and he had said, you can really tell a lot about yourself through the faces of those who are closest to you. And as I watched the faces of those closest to me, I was causing them a lot of anxiety and pain and everything else, just with my lack of self-awareness of like, you might not always be right, and to actually accept that about yourself was like the hardest thing I'd had to go through, which is really sad at some point, but really lucky for me at some point. Right.
Yeah.
And I look at other people who actually had a really difficult life and how they're able to be who they are is just awe-inspiring to me.
Yeah.
But to come to that point where I had to realize, like, you might need to think a lot less of yourself and start using some humility and start like trying to meet the needs of other people before you're demanding that your own are met.
Yeah.
There's a lot there that I still like.
Yeah.
I'm sure even just yesterday that I was, but I will say that the ability to accept those things about myself has like it's made whatever ability for insight I have to reach so much further because I'm not my own way as much. And watching the people around you improve because of reining yourself in and not being that person has it's just made life so much more worth living and better for those who are closest to me.
Yeah.
But that process of like, oh, I'm a piece of shit. Like you have to like you have to like really embrace that sometimes.
Yeah.
Not to your like demise and lack of confidence, but to say I'm arrogant and confident because of these reasons that are positives that are turning you into having these negatives of arrogance and overconfidence.
Yeah.
Now, okay, you have some talent and ability here, but if you don't realize that you also have this here, it means that you're going to be imbalanced in some way. And those things down here, these are the things you need to pay attention to because they're the balancing effect of this in a way. And you've got to bring this up, which you're not losing these things, but they do need to be balanced in some way. And that for me is just being able to get out of my own way. That kind of like everything started to be more able to perceive the truth of things, having not constantly putting myself at the center of everything, which is hard though, because all you have is the central thing of whatever you is.
Well, it's like control. I mean, I think in the creative world, we control a lot of
like just last
creativity.
week, I told my wife, I was like, I think you have like a lot of control issues. And I got my phone and I was like, how do I identify
she
control?
Must have loved hearing that.
And I looked it up and I was like, oh, sweetie, I looked it up and I've got control issues. And it's just like, but I knew as soon as I saw it, I could not share that information with her. And I could just leave that earlier a-hole comment with her. Or I could say like, all right, I'm sorry. It looks like I might be the one that has more control. You might have some. Let's not let you, but I can see this in myself.
Creative people probably have the most issue with control. I mean, I think.
Now, why is that?
I know. Well, I mean, I think that it's environmental. There's something about certainly things I get involved with planning anything. It wouldn't matter what it was, a trip, a wedding, a house. It's a control. It's because.
Is it hard for you to go into something and just let things go as they go?
Oh, yes, really? Very. Yeah. Because I'm driven. I want to succeed at everything I do. Or if I'm a part of a team, I want to be the best I can be in that environment with so it's always it's to me, it does kind of come down to control. I think I've had the hardest time, but got the greatest growth out of letting go of it. And with my own team at work, the more I delegate,
right,
which is not a natural thing for me to do.
It's hard.
Very hard. But I've gotten the most growth out of my company, and the people that work for me have risen to be better at what they do. And then I can see it when I let them do it. And I have to keep reminding myself of that. It not only makes my life easier, go figure, but it's actually more fun, and it's created a much better work environment. So but it's not something I do with ease, so it's a learned thing. Yeah.
So I would think a person I have a hard time pinning the individuals that come up with the ideas and the creations as the creatives.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that everyone's creative in their own way, and I think they are, but
Mhm.
I think there's kind of like different levels of like, foundationally, there's people who are oriented towards anything novel is of interest,
Mhm.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other spectrum, for the highly conscientious people are marked by, if they interact with something that is reliable, repetitive, established, been around forever,
Mm-hmm.
it gives them a positive emotional reaction because they are interacting with safety and reliability.
Mm-hmm.
And as a conscientious or conservative individual, your purpose and drive is towards
Mhm.
maintaining the precious things that have been established that give us all the ability to have a system that works for us as we move forward.
Mhm.
The more open-minded liberal creatives, if you want to call them that type, are always looking to progress.
Yeah.
So they're kind of criticizing what's established
Mhm.
and trying to improve it. And if you don't have those things working together,
Mhm.
it goes wildly wrong in either direction.
Right.
And that's what's so scary to me about the current political situation, is because there's such a lack of grace towards the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
that it's such a lack of wisdom to think that like we should all be liberal or we should all be conservative.
Right.
To not realize like you're the ones that are going to progress us further, and we're the ones that are going to maintain everything that keeps us alive.
Yeah.
Look, like if we don't have this part, it's back to like walking around the forest shooting things you can eat, and like
Right.
my job and your job are out the window. Who cares?
Right.
We're digging caves and ground, and
Yeah.
it's like this. I don't know why these things can't more accurately see the value in each other and work together. And it seems like those sides should mostly be criticizing themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then attempting to come together for the safest middle of the road thing. I have no idea how I started that sentence and where I was going, but it's so fun to just end up in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
That's the open-minded way of going. And so you end. It's funny, in a conversation, I just kind of go like this, and up here, and I'm like, I don't know where that goes. But
Well, it's the temperature out there right now. It's crazy. Anyway, I mean, it's
blame it on the heat.
Yeah. I mean, it's both sides have just lost their minds. I think it's really been something to watch. I mean, it's sad at the
so
same
scary
time.
at the same time.
And it's
though.
very scary for the
'Cause, I mean,
future.
We're
Yeah.
of an age where we grew up mostly in the 90s, we'll
Yeah.
say. And to see the vast change from like not having smartphones or anything else to like you had a secret life that only you and like 100 people knew about.
Yeah.
And if anyone knew anything about you beyond those 100 people, you were famous, kind of.
Yeah.
And now it's just like everyone's secret diary is no longer. It's just everything's out there all the time, and it's this different climate of society and how we show value and control each other and selves and everything else, that
there's too much importance on it. I mean, social media is, I think in business, they've made it necessary. I mean, I'm older than you, Trent, but I feel like I missed it. I missed it and had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, something that when I started my business that, I mean, the best we could do is be published in Maine Home and Design, or,
right.
I mean, forget about documenting your everyday, your every move. And honestly, again, it kind of reverts back to control, sharing all your professional secrets,
right?
Which is really what's going to make people follow you more, is to open up, share all your sources, all your secrets. And that's how you, and that's another thing, that you have to have confidence in what you do, and that what you do is unique, because you do have to do that now. I have to go on Instagram and do videos of how I do certain things, or give away my favorite paint colors, or all these things that I've spent years,
or come
curating.
Talk to some whack job in Biddeford,
But I mean, it's like, that's what people want. And they don't want to pay for it. They just they want.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of deliver some of that. But I found in doing that, it forces me to come up with new stuff that I have to try out and create and build, because, people will copy and do what you do or try
Right.
to, but I'm okay with that. I think it's the biggest form of flattery. I
Right.
mean, it's like, it's just a compliment that people are trying to build the same kind of houses or design the same kind of rooms. I love seeing that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then I just said, well, it's time for me to change stuff up and let's try something different. And, and that's the challenge. Actually, my dad said, was something about, like, on 88, there's a lot of white houses with black windows and these certain kind of doors and everything. And he's like, what are you going to do now? And I'm like, well, I have to figure something new out. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
in the area at one point in time, certain things were unique and now they're not. So you've got to evolve.
Right.
And
see, that's interesting. Like, as a photographer, you don't want to give up, like, this is how I light, or this is how I do post-production,
Yeah.
or this is how, or this, and same thing. Like, it sounds like, as an interior designer, traditionally in the past, you'd have, like, these are my sources, and I can't reveal those to everyone because then everyone can go and get them. In the same way, photographers like, I can't show you how I do my post-production because then everyone will do it.
Yeah.
And then everyone will look the same and they won't look. But yeah, like you said, in this environment now, it demands progression more than it did in the past.
Yeah.
I think there was more of an ability to establish yourself and phone it in for 20 years because I don't think the rate of change was as intense, probably.
Yeah.
Now, with the highly connective tissue of social media between us all, that creative turnaround, the changes of trends and styles and everything else is probably ramping up, I'd imagine. And it just requires then, if you're going to be someone who's out
relevant.
there doing it and relevant, you have to be riding the edge of that wave, in a sense, and continuing to produce. So sharing those things is a way of ingratiating people, if that's the right word, as an audience that is essentially new marketing, in a way. That you're getting the word out there, and this is how I do it. But they'll never be able to replicate the personality, the mind, and the talent of Nicola Manganello. And that's where you have to come back to, and it's like, if
it's still
that's
your
not
eye,
going to define me.
It's still your eye. It's still those decisions you're making that you can't teach that to, it's your own personal innate style that you can certainly try to, and that's really what social media is. Let's try to teach them how we're doing it, little, bow by bow on, certain moments of a interior design room. But, it's your own eye that really is your brand.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's interesting to me. I wonder if you've experienced this. I'll have people tell me, like, oh, as soon as I saw that image, I knew that was yours. And I kind of I can't identify my own images really from other people. I mean, in that, like, I see this style. I mean, I know the image because I took it. Like, I can look at the millions of photos I've taken by now, and I know every single one. It's only recently that I've gotten such a amount of images that I've taken that I'm getting to where was that? Okay.
Yeah.
Like before, it's just, I knew where they were and what it was, but I can't necessarily articulate why this is my look. It's just, that's how I do that.
Yeah.
And I can struggle and I've become a lot better at articulating why I would move the camera a certain direction and all the conflicts that would arise, or why I would light this way. And Tim has taken over all the post-production, and I kind of am an aesthetic designer from outside, and he's really creating the final image out of that. But I can articulate in the moment why I would do this, that, or the other, but I've never been one who can feel that, like, oh, that's one of my images, or that looks like one of my images. I'll see an image and I'll think that's done well, but other it's interesting. I wish I could experience what other people experience, because I could
Yeah.
see a Nicola Manganello home and know it immediately.
I think when I heard something really interesting this morning, and it was a.
Well, now I'm about to hear something.
I know, I know. It really made. I think when I say that it's interesting, it's because it made me stop and think. So I found it interesting. And it was a woman talking about jealousy, and she was talking about how people react when they see certain things. So for us, it would be something visual. So for me to see someone else's work, and if I instantly have this sort of feeling of envy or jealous, like they did something very interesting.
Yeah.
But what they're saying is not, that feeling is just like that there's a moment of growth there. Like you're not jealous of them, but they're doing something that appeals to you.
Right.
So it's not, it's like, it's how you think about it differently. So it's like when I see other people's work sometimes the first reaction is, I wish I got published in that magazine,
Yeah,
or you know what I mean?
100%.
It's like, or my work's as good as that work, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not, it kind of comes out immediately as jealous. It really made me like think about things completely different this morning.
Oh yeah.
I was like, wow, it's the truth of when you see work that rivals yours, or you maybe can't tell, the lighting is just as good in this as some of the stuff I've done, then you're like, there's that moment of like, it kind of comes up in me in that way a little bit.
So there was a penthouse that we shot in Boston, some, crazy hedge fund managers kind of place. Insane. It's like on the top of one of the very downtown buildings. It's top 3 floors, and it's just amazing. And I had shot in the bathroom. It's this big kind of one of those tubs, standalone, that has the big arc to it, white kind of, not porcelain, but not. It's some kind of good plastic, solid material. I don't know what it is, but and it's in a corner, and there's these 2 windows, and I saw the image and I was like, oh, that's really nice. I did a good job. And then I realized someone else had shot it too. And I looked at their composition, and then I went back and looked at mine, and I was like, I was like, it was better.
Yeah.
And like, it's fear, it's anxiety, it's, I didn't do my job well enough. It's all of those things. And it's imposter syndrome. It's, I'm never going to be successful because there's always going to be someone better than me. And if there's options that are better than me, they're going to choose them, and I'm never going to work again. And my children, I'm going to have to work at 7-Eleven until I can figure out, like, those are all things like when you're monetizing creativity as a sole entity entrepreneur, it's such a weird emotional dynamic, because you're selling your life experience objectified into that creation that you're giving them. And there's so much of your own emotion in it. You're not an accountant that's reputation depends on, did you count all the beans accurately? It's what you create. And here's a really interesting thing that I'll bore you with. So when the essence of what a creative or an open person does in relation to their society, culture, community, you name it. To create anything new, you have to go into the raw material zone of chaos in a way. And I don't mean post-apocalyptic war. I mean, like, all right, here's tons of options. I have to relate to them all. And then I have to pull one of them in as an option that'll work. That relating to everything, that's chaos. And what that means is I'm interacting with something where I do not understand the order or the relationships. Now I have to experience it. I have to objectify it through my subjective experience into something that'll work to solve this problem. So you're leaving established order to go and interact with all the potential. And the potential is in chaos, because that's not what is ordered yet. So you go into that and you say, here's these, and these are going to work great for this home and this living room setting that they want, or this photo or whatever. So when you take that same kind of thing and you apply it to a societal thing, right? There's the established way of doing things. Think of it as a medieval city wall. That city wall is built of bricks that were creations that open people have gone out into chaos and brought back something that said, this will work great for organizing our society and community and everything else. I present it to the whole. Do you think this is a good idea? And they say that might be good for you, but it's not good for all of us. Feel free to hang it in your own home, but we're not putting it in the Louvre. And then you might come back with, here's an invention, here's a home, here's anything. You're coming back to the establishment to say, can we add it to the wall that helps maintain us all? And you could be coming back and saying, I've made a better brick for brick number 35B that's crumbling, right? You're saying part of the wall is bad and I need to replace it, and I've done my work. So when those open people leave the established thing, they're shamed in many ways, because you're leaving what is keeping everyone safe to go and produce something new to bring it back. And the ability or the risk in doing that is very high, because good luck finding something new that hasn't already been done or in that combination, right? So as it relates to society, if we take this same process and apply it to society, when you leave the establishment, everyone who doesn't leave with you kind of looks at you like, we're not good enough for you. This isn't good enough for you. You are going into chaos, and you might burn up in that chaos. This is dangerous. And so when you leave to go out and do that, it's not a direct one-to-one like society gets at the wall and says, you suck. As much as they say, this is dangerous and what you're doing might not have a good return. So when I told my dad I was going to be a photographer, his reaction was to laugh and say, you can't support a family that way. In the first year of business, I made more than him. I rub his nose in it every way. But anyways, so that idea of if you're leaving what's established, it's dangerous to you. It's a risk. But if you do it well, when you return, if you do it well, the people that stayed say, holy cow, you did it. They bring you in, they put you on their shoulders, and they pay you exorbitantly, as in they value whatever you did and they value you, and you get rewarded for that. If you come back and you haven't been successful and it's burnt you up, they put your head on a spike outside the gate, and they say, this person tried to go into chaos. We warned you about chaos. We have all our established norms that protect us. They do this kind of unwisely, but at the same time, don't do it, because this is what happens to people that go into chaos. And that's essentially what my dad was doing in that moment. He feared for me, and he said, you have to provide for a family now, and you're going to go provide for a family out in chaos. That's going to burn you up. It's not reliable. You should get a job with someone who will give you a reliable pay, reliable 401k, and you'll be able to take care of your family. I understand it. I get it. Now, the sad thing about that is when conscientious people leave the realm that we've created, all of us together, when they leave that realm of order, they are usually leaving that realm of order to protect it, not to add to it as much as to protect it. So they're leaving in the form of military and police, typically, or judges, or things like that. Things that say, this is the value, and we will maintain and protect, right? When we send our conscientious people outside the wall, we do a lot of flag waving and fanfare and say, thank you so much for your contribution, blah, blah, blah. And when they come back successfully, we give them a parade, and we don't really pay them that much more. And when they come back missing an arm or dead, we give them very minor compensation and say, thank you for your service and everything else. We give them a funeral and we move on. I am rewarded so much more highly. You are rewarded so much more highly because of the nature of what we do, oddly, and how our society values it, which is, I don't necessarily understand the complete nature of that. That what we're doing is making something out of nothing. And the value that you and I get for doing that reflects the values of our society. Our society mostly values adding to it more than maintaining it at this point. And I don't know if it's simply that it's a high risk, high reward proposition to try and create or to monetize creativity, or if we were in a different society and a different age, that the warrior class, the conscientious class was more rewarded like we currently reward creatives. I don't know, but that's a weird kind of thing to realize, that you're shamed when you leave and you're potentially really shamed when you return a failure. But if you return successful, your reward is through the roof. But for the conscientious, it's pretty much same when you leave, same when you come back.
Yeah.
Because you're a manager at that point rather than adding to it in a way. Now, if you don't take this as a metaphor, you could take what I'm saying very literally and be very offended by it. But I'm trying to grasp on what our society values and why we as creatives are valued in that way. It's why entrepreneurs that start businesses a lot of times are not really great at running businesses, because to start something, you have to have the vision and you have to take the risk and you have to be open to that. But then to apply your energy to a now established order in the way that you would say, I just drew this out yesterday. It's so weird. But if you apply energy through an order filter, you get kind of a laser on the other side, right? Energy through order becomes a laser. Energy through a chaos filter becomes this thing that's just. But when I drew it out, I looked at it and I was like, well, that looks like a fiesta. Analogy. It looks like a party. Well, what are people doing when they put that energy into a party? They're just releasing energy in this chaotic way. And there's something about us that we need that, like, I just got to put out some energy right now in a non-aggressive, non-deterministic, just, I got to, for a bit. And there's something to that. It's like a vacation in a way. And it's like you're letting the energy go through you. And it's just kind of, but it's also that chaos generation through energy. It also produces the relationship and the awareness to then create another order filter that you can put then more energy through to create that laser focus of Nicola Manganello's homes or Trent Bell photography. But you've got to put that energy back through the chaos filter too, because you have to create more perception, more creativity to create this new, like, more minimalist home. Like you applied your normal energy and you put it through a new filter. So you had to, in some sense, put energy through the chaos filter to create more possibilities that then you applied to this much more minimalist thing. I'm really on the edge of understanding what I'm talking about here.
No, it's deep stuff. I mean, you're talking about, shame, there's all, there's like, that's a huge, and how we got where we got, why are we rewarded for our, and, but I think that just as responsible humans in society, whether your success is, emotional or monetary, we have a responsibility, no matter what side we stand on, we have a responsibility to give back, whether it's, with our efforts or, with helping create something, helping build something that's, maybe for the people that aren't as fortunate, and haven't been recognized. That's all it is. They've not been recognized for what they do bring to the table.
Do you ever have thoughts of like, oh my goodness, what if I had to start over?
Oh God, every day.
Do you think you could do it like at this age? And I say that in reference to myself, because I think about how high it was a half court shot, like to get from I'm absolutely no one who's never even gone to photo school, doesn't even know how to put a lens on a camera body. So no, I'm going to support my family with that. It's a half court shot. And somehow it happened. And it always kind of freaks me out to think, why did it happen? What was it about me that I was able to do that? What was it about my surrounding people? Like,
well, I think if you really go back and think and look, it's probably we forget what it took, and it took a lot of effort. It took a lot. This is, we're not both sitting here today because we didn't, we sat back and ate bonbons all day.
I look back though, and I think there was a appropriate level of irresponsibility that contributed to my success, honestly.
Well, that's just because you're relating it to supporting your family, and like, but I think what's more important is that if you you wanted to love what you did. You wanted to love
Yep.
where you had to go every day because you
Yep.
needed to bring home the bacon. And
It's not that I had to love where I was going. I wanted it to be different. Because I enjoy going to Michigan for like Thanksgiving sometimes.
Yeah.
And I hate Michigan. But I can go there knowing I don't
Yeah.
have to be tied to it.
Mhm.
And nothing against people from Michigan or even Michigan itself.
Right.
But Michigan, come November, gets a sheet put over it.
Yeah.
And it's gray. There's
Yeah.
no definition.
Yeah.
And that stays from November to May.
Yeah.
And you'll just want to blow your brains out.
Oh,
But to go back there and to look at it, it's just like, oh,
yeah. Yeah.
so bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the
Yeah.
rust and the cloudiness and the rain and
Yeah.
for that time of the year to go back there, it's like you're everywhere is a car wreck that you're driving by that's horrible and
Yeah.
sad, but you're like, no, I'm not bothered by that. You know,
Yeah.
it's weird.
But that we're built by our experiences, how we were raised. I mean,
Yeah.
this is all a piece of who you are, who I am. You know, whether we've grown from it, branched out from it, changed directions, our paths are, you know, uniquely our own. And I think that, you know, that probably, it reflects probably in your work. I would think it must. It would have to.
The thing that's reflected in my work in so many ways is the year I spent working at a pallet factory and my time spent in Michigan.
Uh-huh.
These are two things that they're not failures in my life, but they're very, very dark times that
Mhm.
stoke the fire.
Yeah.
We'll say. It's like,
Yeah.
do whatever you have to do to not be there.
Yeah.
And motivate yourself how you got to motivate yourself. You know, if I have a job where I get a consistent paycheck, I'm immediately a bad employee.
Yeah.
Why am I going to do more or less work and get the same amount of money? And like, I have a hard time finding motivation in it.
Yeah.
I need to be on the line. It needs to be risk and my reputation.
Yeah.
And I need to be on that sharpest thing of like, there's a degree of like, I want to set out to sail across the Atlantic very unprepared and to say, all right, you've got to be so incredibly resourceful to accomplish this. That's like invigorating to me.
But isn't there a certain amount of ego in what we do?
Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, it's like, you know,
interesting thing. Okay,
I see that.
How so?
Because if I were to define ego, it's like it's a self belief. It's like a, you know, I can do this. I'm good enough. You have to. We certainly have enough shame in our life and in our world, you know. So
you grew up Catholic?
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. I don't have as much shame. This is what I've heard. I don't.
Yeah. Yes. No. It's true. It's true. But in going through all of that, you know, and overcoming it,
yeah,
you know, I do think there's a little bit of there, you know, to remain on your level and on your game. There is a certain amount of ego that does exist, I think.
Okay, so I think I agree with you. The problem is so I went through losing my faith that has been like the best thing for me ever. Mm-hmm. But it was a very intentional. I didn't just walk away. I faced it and mm-hmm. dismantled it. Mm-hmm. And I've kept the parts that I think are valuable. Mm-hmm. I've kept the parts that I think are true. Mm-hmm. And I've had to let the human additive, I've just had to let that go. Yeah. And I've also had to work on not having that emotional resentment towards mm-hmm. those who remain or even the system in general. And mm-hmm. I've had to see it for what it serves for the needs of those people and to, when appropriate and not hurtful, say my piece if it's appropriate in dissent or whatever else. And that's a hard line to walk. But that thing of ego, like what I was describing earlier with the conflict of who I was and what it was doing to my wife and my family, that was a real confrontation with ego for me in my personal life. And I think I'm very, very oriented towards very close personal relationships. That's why conversations like this mean everything to me. how you doing? Weather, great. See ya.
Yeah.
I just don't have time for it. It's so
Right.
useless. I know it's useful for people who are wired differently.
Yeah.
It's not for me. It's
Right.
only anxiety, and I got to get out of there,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in losing faith and then dealing with that, there's something that I came to understand my ego in some way, and that it didn't have to be there. I didn't have to protect this thing that didn't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
I had to be open to like, what is the truth and how do I relate to it? And the ego just, if I'm putting my desires and my ego in front of truth,
Mm-hmm.
then I call that sin now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a manipulation that I want what is actually true to end up towards an end that serves me rather than being true to what this should be, I see that as like that's where I don't want to go. So if someone can point out something that I'm doing wrong or selfishly, I'm telling myself that's an incredibly valuable thing, and I don't have to worry about, I can just accept that and say, oh, you sure? Because I think this and I think that. Oh, okay, I see what you say there. And I see, oh, well, yeah, okay. All right. I'm going to let that part of me go because that's not serving anyone. Like if I keep working everything towards protecting self, that to me, that feels like that ego. When I interact with things and move forward, understanding that I do believe there's truth outside of us that we have the responsibility to relate to. And I'm not saying that it's, a male God with a penis that's in the sky that, I'm saying that there's truth outside of us, and that's as far as I take it anymore.
Yeah. And
for that to be God or anything else, my definition of God is truth and relationship.
Yeah.
Honestly working together. And if that projects into Jesus, Joseph, Mary, and the saints, that is not for me to determine. If I let those things come too close to my psychology, they become distorted and perverted by my desires. And I start to see things in that interpretation that I want to be there, and manipulates truth to potentially my own ends, sin. So I don't want to go there. But that realizing that somehow for me dismantled that ego, that desire to protect reputation. I'll say my feelings, my truth, and what I believe is true, but I have to accept when it's not. And I have to realize the desire to not accept truth is a misleading thing. So to not have that thing in front of you and to be able to put that to bed, for me, the creativity starts to become so much more accessible. And there's not this fear mixed within that. Because to me, it's full on fear when I see that better image of that bathroom. Yeah. And now I look at it and say, the truth is he did a better job. Learn from it. Yeah. And move on. There's nothing else you can do. Yeah. And how many people saw that image and mine and compared them? Maybe a few clients that, produce that tub or that faucet or something. And that's not the only interaction I'm ever going to have with potentially making that a client or anything else. So it's, there's a degree of just like cliche, letting those things go and accepting that there's truth and the ability to relate to it. And for me, that's been the most freeing. And I've watched people around me change their defensiveness or posture towards me because of it. And to see the defensiveness in people drop as a response to how you conduct yourself is a very positive feedback. Yeah. And so that thing of ego, I don't know what it is as much as I can describe it in that very long tirade. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. But in having to struggle with that, realizing who I am, and it's not the greatest thing ever. Yeah. And dismantling faith, but not simply walking away from it, to turn and face it and to put my full effort into refining it, because that is my call as an open disposition, is to say, I think critically about things. I have to be careful who I apply it to, because not everyone wants to interact in that way. I love people who can just be like, this is wrong and I don't like it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, why?
Yeah.
You know, this is going to be a
Yeah.
great conversation if they're open to actually articulating why they think that.
Yeah.
And the people that I work with, most of them that I get along really well with are of that, just very, not brash, but very direct.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh, all the cards are on the table. We're not hiding anything, and you're not trying to pat me on the back. We're getting towards truth here. That's great. I love that. So working with people like Carol Wilson, all the times I've worked with her is just so interesting because she's there's no meat on it, or there's no fat on it. It's just all like, yeah, this is great, or no, let's keep working, or you know, and it's just, you know, exactly where you stand, and I just feel so comfortable in that, and I don't necessarily know why, but it always brings the best out of me in feeling like there's no pretense in a way.
Oh yeah. Well, you're just getting down to business and getting it. You know, I mean, I think that would save a lot of time in a day if we didn't have to have all this doubt, and, you know, if we could just all be so direct and to the point, you know, I mean.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I find that the creative types that can handle the directness, because I think with creativity there comes creative in the typical sense. I think there naturally comes with it our friend that we were talking about coming up the stairs. There comes a rawness of emotion, or a rawness of openness that can be very caustic to the individual that holds it.
Yeah.
So even for me, I can be very sensitive, and I build up a lot of defenses to not have to experience that.
Yeah.
And I see that in my youngest son. He, like, up to the age of 4, the most sensitive, just soft, like endearing child, far more than our older kid. I say that like the older one's a cast off, like the older one. But, you know, but at this age, at 10 years old, he's built up the walls and the determination and the everything else. And that warmth and openness and love is no longer visible in him like it was.
Yeah.
And that's hard to see, but I also understand it. So I at least have the ability to know it's there and why it's not there, and to try and to act out as an example for him the ways that you can interact with the world, so you don't have to have those things there, so you can still be that person.
You don't want them to lose their purity and the way they look at the world, and because it's difficult now.
It's
School
inevitable
for
with
kids,
everyone, though, I imagine.
Oh my God, it's different than when you were there. Much more different than when I was there.
Right.
And it was hard when I was there. I can't imagine what it's like now with social media and everything else.
Our kids don't have any phones or anything.
Oh, well.
They're still in the Stone Age.
Yeah, but maybe everyone around them does, and it could be, you know.
Yeah. Well, they're homeschooled. So.
Oh, they. Well, then.
I love that reaction.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
well, good for you.
Well,
my
not
God.
me. My wife does it. So.
Oh my God,
that's a lot of work.
That's an undertaking.
It's a lot of undertaking, a lot of work. To me, it feels like a risk because it's not normal. They've left the established wall of order of everyone goes to school, and they're out here in chaos. Like maybe they'll succeed, or maybe they'll be completely unable to identify and interact with people when they're 16.
Yeah.
Who knows? So that's a creative side of me that I'm not comfortable with. But it's not that I'm not comfortable with it. It's just like, it's an unknown. I know it's an unknown. So it's a known unknown.
Yeah. But you're making a choice, and probably for all the right reasons. So
don't know how much of a choice I have in it at this point. But there's also the selfish part of me. We can just leave for like 3 months in the winter.
Yeah.
And it's fine. So
and what they learn from you guys doing trips and stuff like that would be
that's my idea. They
won't learn that in a classroom.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's so much that they get to do and learn and be a part of that they couldn't. And so that's that's something. So let's hit these other questions as well here. And what time do you need to take off here? It's 12:02 currently.
Oh, I'm good. Okay. I have a few
Okay.
more minutes.
Question number 1.
Yeah.
Many people listening right now have seen your work without perhaps realizing it. I'm assuming, or we're assuming that anyone's listening, but that's fine. Can you tell us about some of the local restaurants you've designed? What is the general feeling you want to evoke when customers enter these spaces? I did not know you've done restaurants. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. Well,
restaurants are a great application of what you do too.
Yeah, we just opened a new one in Falmouth called the Sicilian Table.
Ooh.
And it's but how I get into restaurants is my dad, my family is in restaurant business. More recently, probably over the last 12 years, 15 maybe. The Royal River Grill House, which is in Yarmouth, the Tuscan Bistro, which is up in Freeport, and out by the mall, there's the Tuscan Table, and now the Sicilian Table. So, and I love doing restaurants. I love doing commercial because you can do bigger, more interesting spaces. Probably for me, more contemporary than I would normally do, but and then it's just a totally different use of the space. I mean, this isn't something for people to live in and use lightly. These are heavily used spaces.
Are like hour to 2 hour moments that they interact with what you've designed.
So I'm absolutely fascinated by doing it. I think it's probably one of my favorite things to do now. And I've only been doing it probably over the last 10 years, I think.
Is there an essentially foundationally different interaction with doing commercial from residential that you can talk on?
The process is similar, I would say, creatively speaking. But what goes into it is a little more. I'm so familiar with building homes and residential use. The codes and everything is very different in commercial applications. Right. So it's a little more complicated. I had the learning curve there on some of that. But the goal is still the same. I want to create a space where people want to linger and be in and return to.
Have you ever been in an Airstream, like a newer one?
I have, yeah.
I've experienced because I have an Airstream trailer now, and this is the first time I've experienced exactly what you just said. Anyone that gets inside of there lingers.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I keep trying to figure it out, but I think it's something to do with, first of all, it's a very pretty space in the end. Yeah. Like we have it's got like the big L-shaped thing and a table and round windows, and like the entry part of it is just like, ooh. Yeah. And my wife went in there to show a friend, and they were just going to look at it for like 2 minutes and walk out. Yeah. 4 hours later, they sat down. This happens again and again and again with this one space. Yeah. And I'm trying to, like, there's got to be some kind of way to articulate and refine down to, like, because of the curved walls, because of the different surface, because of the curved glass, that this space is so unique. It's something they haven't experienced, and it balances this weird line of comfort and tightness but airiness that once people get in it, they're kind of like, I'm just gonna talk for a bit. Yeah. Well, it's probably all the above. It's like I think that's an if you're going to travel in an Airstream, being that it's such limited space, you're going to want to like being in it. It's so nice. Yeah. So it's by far the most in love I've been with any material object ever. It's just like you go in, it's all right, this is good. Yeah. Stay here. Yeah. But it has that same effect on most everyone. They just come in and then they just kind of, a lot of times if you show someone something like that, they'll kind of stand politely. Yeah. And like, this is really nice. We're glad that you could do this. Okay. Yeah. And they leave. Or, or there's more of like, if it's a restaurant or a home, there's all these other different expectations of why you're there and how to act within that space. Yeah. But with that one, it's usually someone's just kind of hanging out. Yeah. And it's like a fly trap. They just stay. The 2 of the 4 restaurants are in, like, one's in the mall parking lot, and now the newest one is out in the Shaw's Plaza in Falmouth. So it's a great interior space. So the idea, the idea is to transport people when they go inside, right? Because, the locations are convenient, but not always so appealing from the outside. So that was, challenging to
draw people in, but then, have them want to stay once they
Right.
get there,
Yeah, to
So
almost
they're
not be able to
unexpected.
remember what's
Yeah.
outside and
Yeah.
like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Question number 2. How do you start your design process with your clients?
I try to get to know them. I think that's the,
How do you do that?
just like by talking, usually I have them come to my studios on my property. So it's like inviting them to my home. It's a barn on my property. And I just want to get a feel for who they are. If we, kind of jibe, I think you have to like each other to work on these projects for such a long period of time. And I want to understand what their vision is for their home, and then I don't usually say much about what I would do in the first meeting. It's like, it's really about them and what they want. And that's important for me to hear so I can understand and decide if I can deliver that.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
So in my mind, I'm putting this through my filter that I now put everything through. And it's like, well, how do you get to know your potential client if you want to work with them? Well, you enter into chaos. You relate to them.
Yeah.
And then from that, you kind of objectify into some form of articulate word truth, like, I could work with this person.
Yeah.
And then we're going to make it really articulate and we're going to sign on some dotted lines.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's this 2-part system that's always at work.
And I've had to refine it over the years because I was not always good at selecting which clients would be best fitted for me. And I think if there's any advice I'd give, it'd be that where I'm at now in my career is not that I can be selective, but it's that I really take the time to try to get to know these people to make sure that we have this, it's a certain, they have to, I have to respect what they want out of their project, and they have to respect what it's going to cost to have me bring my entire team. It's not just me. There's a whole other infrastructure around me.
Right.
And it's just, there's a fine line,
Right.
and oftentimes I can get a year into a project and it's only happened once, and it happened this year. So, that you have to make this decision. And your intuition's
So, like,
always
let a client go.
Yeah. And your intuition tells you like in day one.
Right.
But learning how to listen to that is like, and so a year into it, you're like, all right, I think what's happening here is you don't see my value.
Right. Right.
And so I think this is probably a good time for us to part ways.
That's interesting. I shut up my intuition because I'm cheap sometimes. And like I hired some people to do some things, and if I were in tune with my intuition, I would not have hired these people to do these things. And it's just, at some point you're like,
I'm honing
just gotta
this.
Ride this out.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just honing that skill of, listen, you've done it long. Listen to yourself. Believe in that message that's being fed
hard.
to you.
You're having to listen to an inarticulate feeling.
Yeah.
But it's just like
but it is as real as the day is long.
Yeah.
It is there.
Yeah.
I knew it. And
interesting.
I kept trying to like make it right throughout the whole process. But in the end, the truth did prevail. And I knew it. It's like, it's one of those things and that's this year.
Right.
25 plus some odd years into it here. I mean, it's a constant, you're not always right. You will fail, I mean, but there's no shame in failing. Yeah.
Oh, there's so much to be learned in failing.
Yeah.
But that's interesting because what you just said, like, is one of those things that you've been able to articulate and share with me. And now I'm able to take what you outlined and put these experiences in my life that of my life
Yeah.
into the outline that you just created with that sentence.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what happened there. And I
Yeah.
didn't listen to my intuition. That was my intuition that moment.
Yeah.
And I had suspicion and I had like a gut feeling that was like,
Yeah.
but the price was so low.
Yeah.
Ooh. And
yeah.
I'm so guilty of that so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Number 3. What are some red flags in dealing with clients for you? Like if hypothetically hypothetical
speaking,
clients.
Yeah.
Like if a client XYZ, like as a
I think in this particular situation that I'm speaking of,
hypothetically,
the client, on my contract, we talk about photography.
Oh, getting access to be able to
Yeah,
photograph.
we talk about, and that was a sticking point. And
they just didn't want it photographed.
No, they wanted it photographed, but wanted to own the photography and control how it was used. And I know, I was like, I mean, this is opening a whole other like
can of worms,
but I mean, it was one of those. Never before have I, and I can't even list the number.
You'd
of
have
houses.
a hard time hiring a photographer that would allow
and
someone
so
to own the photos.
Me
outright.
having to explain that, but then I thought to myself, if this is a sticking point, and we somehow worked around that after I explained that I don't even own the photography. It's like, it was just one of those things that, if the client wants that much control, then they don't want me.
Right.
But I couldn't have put that into words.
Right.
Then, they want me to enhance their work or all the decisions they want to make. And that are, it's not them hiring me to do my job.
Right.
It was something else. So
we're getting a lot of wind and light today, but it's just what it is. That's interesting. Yeah, because it's such a delicate dance between like the owner's obviously going to have preferences.
Sure.
And it's a combination of how to get to where you go. But when you feel like, no, I'm going to be in the lead and you will do as I, and we'll sprinkle some Nicola in there somewhere. But, that's
so in essence, they wanted to use me for what I am valuable for, but in the end, really not pay for it and not let me leave with anything.
Right.
And, and so it all came out in the wash, but the red flags are there. There's always red flags. When it's not going to be a good decision for you, the flag is there. It's learning how to see it, read it. I always talk budget up front just because, get the ugly stuff out of the way, the fun, the creative, that all comes.
Selling a car, I put all the bad things right at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'll have people question like, you're really not trying to sell this. I'm like, no, it's reverse psychology.
Yeah.
Like, this is really all the things that are wrong with it.
Yeah.
And so you're going to trust me in that and not feel like you're buying a piece of junk.
Yeah.
You know how much junk is here and there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah.
Any material you love to use right now? It's a power round, quick questions.
Any material? Probably lighting. I think lighting is big right now.
Window placement and reflective surfaces, colors that reflect, stuff like that.
Yeah. And lights themselves. I mean, light in a space is huge. And so I am paying attention to that much more so.
Especially after yesterday. Because we all live in our houses in the dark.
And we lost an hour.
Or like every evening now. It's like lights on.
Yeah. But lighting is huge. And not just in the end because one of the reasons I do pay attention to it now is because when you shoot a space with natural light, It comes
that
alive.
consistent color temperature,
Yeah.
and that just kind of the infill of that key light being the sun and the bounce of all the light in there, and you just leave that shutter exposed for longer. When you have that natural light look, it's just like the depth of the textures and the shadowing and everything comes in. That's
it's important.
Interesting. Us photographers have influenced you in some way. Let's see. What is the most underrated room in a house besides the utility closet?
The most the powder room, I think.
Like the guest bathroom, essentially?
Yeah.
Like
well, like,
downstairs?
I have the most fun in powder rooms, I think.
Why is that?
Well, people don't think of it this way, but everyone that comes into your house probably uses it. And I think it's one of the most important spaces in that, because
it's a private moment for your guests.
Yes.
There's that.
Yeah. And it's very usually it's an intimate space.
Right.
But so much I've been layering powder rooms with, because it's, it's a bathroom, I realize, but there's no saying it couldn't be fun while you're sitting there, give you something to look at. Yeah.
So here's an incredibly good idea, and you're free to use it. I want to, in some house someday, I want to put like an actual airline bathroom in.
Oh, wow.
So it's like just out of the nowhere, you're like,
oh, interesting. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Clack, clack.
Yeah.
As like as a powder room, it's just like everything you need, right? And that, how weird would that be? Like for me, it's so unexpected that it would just be a little treat during the day, that it's just that weird.
Yeah. No, that's kind of funny though. That's interesting.
Yeah. When did you know you wanted to build and design homes?
Pretty early on, actually.
Really?
I mean, I bought a small property in Yarmouth and renovated it, and I had a store. So it was my house and a store. And that's when I knew that I wanted to renovate homes. I didn't know I wanted to do it for a living at that point in time, but a woman it was women's clothing, home accessories, it was that kind of thing.
Right.
And a woman came into my shop and she asked me to come to her house because she said she wants her house to feel like the inside of my store. And that's, And then I had a baby, and then that became like, I needed to not be in retail. The hours didn't work for me and stuff. And so I went into interior design, and that one woman, that one comment, and she said, I love coming here because I can get a little something for myself and a little something for my soul, she said. And I was like, well, there must be something to that. So I put a little bit more attention to it. And
interesting. That is a good origin story.
Yeah. I know, right? Like totally.
Interesting. So how much do you think about or reflect on the advantages, disadvantages, uniqueness for you as a woman doing what you do as a woman? Like, has there been obvious advantages, obvious disadvantages, things that you wish weren't there that are there, or things that you wish were there that aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think to this day, and I think it's probably because I'm a woman, that, people, they automatically just think decorator, that, we can build whole houses, general contract them, draw and design them. I have an architect on staff. I mean, we can do the whole thing. I am a firm of all women.
That perception, I think, would be gone in about 30 seconds. Because I remember I don't remember specifically the first time we interacted.
Yeah.
But I knew within the first 30 seconds, I was dealing with someone who had immense amounts of drive, vision, and was going to be accomplished no matter what. And you're an outlier in not hugely. I'm not saying like women can't achieve what
No,
I'm saying there's like a 60-40 split between the differences between men and women mostly. And so just by that sense, you're a bit of an outlier in that you're like, I've got this amount of identity of what I'm going to do that I'm going to accomplish myself.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of an outlier in there. But then
Yeah.
to be a business owner is another outlier. To be a successful business owner is another outlier.
Mhm.
How much time and thought do you put into like, what is it about me that has made me able to, pay for my daughter's schooling and drive a car and have a
Yeah.
mortgage that I can pay, how much do you consider that?
It's, I was raised in an entrepreneurial family.
Oh,
So,
okay.
um, my mom stayed home with us and my dad worked, but you know, he started a business and grew it, and I watched, and
And he didn't treat you in a way that was like, no, you should be staying home and daddy
no,
does this. And
no,
he was like,
yeah,
little girl, you can do this.
yeah. No, he definitely, probably fostered that in me, the idea of being independent, strong enough to be able to do something that I was good at and turn it into something. Surround yourself with people that are good at what they do.
Right.
That was his biggest thing.
Did you always have the idea that you wanted to be your own boss and run your own thing? Or was that just something that came up out of necessity? Or
No, yeah, I didn't know that's what my life would turn into. My dad would tell you that I was probably only because I worked for him for a summer, and he goes, "Why do I feel like I'm working for you?"
See?
So yeah, and then I didn't work for him the next summer, but he, yeah, I mean, I think I was born to lead, and I mean, I was driven to lead. I think, I mean,
interesting.
I honestly, I can't imagine it any other way at this point, at this juncture. Yeah, I mean, I think it's not been easy. It's been, I had to make, sacrifices. I didn't homeschool my daughter. I would have loved to have spent that kind of time with her,
That's super hard.
but I mean, it's like you do, there are sacrifices that are made, and you have to make those choices. But,
yeah, for me, I never wanted to be a leader, but I would not be led.
yeah,
If no one else was leading, I would lead,
yeah,
but I would certainly not. It's got to be a really specific person for me to
yeah,
follow long term.
yeah.
Especially, I don't know that I'd ever be. I mean, if I was in the military, I'd be a sniper for sure.
Well, and when I say lead, I mean, now that, when you have employees and stuff, and you have to do reviews, and
It's a huge
you
amount
have
of
to
leadership
hire
there.
and fire. This is just on top of the other stuff you got to do all day.
Yeah.
I mean, inside of that, it's a responsibility. So you're trying to lead these people to do their jobs better. I hire a lot of young girls that are coming out of college, and then I am feeling like a little bit of a leader, more of a teacher, but help them grow and move on, and maybe have their own businesses someday.
Right.
But
you've been nothing if not successful, it seems. So,
well,
if I'm saying that right. Let's see, number 6. What underscores all of your work?
I know, right? You were raising your eyebrow. What underscores?
I didn't come up with the question, so I don't get to explain it.
I don't know if I'm going to fully understand it. Underscore.
What would be the unifying principle between any Nicola Manganello project? Let's reword it that way.
Okay. I go back to my original comment on creating a space that people want to really live and linger, love,
that comfort.
Yeah. This sort of comfort, broken in comfort, and that they see themselves in for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
How would a good friend describe your style?
Oh, interesting.
Trying to think of, I'm always self referentializing thing.
Yes, I know. Because
But,
how do you think a friend would do?
so many people say to me, just like minimal, simple.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm interacting with like framing up a composition, I'm eliminating as much as I can
Mm-hmm.
until it feels empty. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we've gone too far. Now, what
Mm-hmm.
adds just the right amount when we put it back in?
Yeah.
But both in lighting and styling, I'm always gravitating towards just simple, calm aesthetic,
Yeah.
which minimalism to a
Yeah.
large degree. And it's interesting, like the stuff of yours that I've shot, that minimalism comes through, I think, more so in how I allow the lighting to affect
Yeah.
compositions. From what I can remember,
Yeah.
it's more so very, very much natural light and very light hand in adding in
Yeah.
any lighting in that, and to allow the textures and the depth of a lot of the textures come
Yeah.
out in the shadowing and everything.
Yeah.
I think it's more so a minimalism in lighting
Mm-hmm.
when I've interacted with your projects that gets so not engrossing. What's the word? Feel like you fall into something and you can really
Envelop.
feel envelop.
Yeah.
The just the shadowing on like an Afghan or a tufted surface on a thing. Just have those repetitive shadows because it's a single directional light source, and to not backfill those shadows too much.
Yeah, I would say probably like a broken in elegance maybe might be.
Ooh, I like that.
Sort of.
Yeah. Broken in elegance.
I know. If I had, I mean that I've heard some friends say that. So it's not my own term. So
no, that's pretty
that's
pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. We're gonna go with that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where do you find inspiration?
Oh, everywhere. I mean, it's not hard these days. I mean,
yeah.
Maine
is on, I mean, in my opinion, Maine is really on the way up as far as all the huge influx of talent, but then also the filter of like, you're not getting away with that here. You're not getting away with that kind of behavior, that opulence, whatever.
Yeah.
There's also the talent, but also the what pre-exists here and the reasons it's here that speaks from the vernacular that quiets that other push.
I mean, I think it's an exciting time in Maine. I think, which is like both good and bad.
Always is.
But people are seeing the beauty and all that Maine has to offer.
There's nowhere else on the East Coast that I would be interested in being permanently.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the West Coast geographically is amazing, but it's too many people, too many.
Yeah. And I grew up here. I was born in Portland and lived in Yarmouth my whole life. I still do. So it's a testament to, and I've traveled.
Power of Maine.
Yeah. And I love coming home.
Well, that happens to a lot of kids that grow up in Maine, is they're like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
And in their 30s, they're like, get me back there.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really engrossing, and that's a good word, right? You've turned on a lot of and made a lot of connections in my mind.
Okay.
From all the stuff you've shared, and it's been really, really nice talking to you. I got to know a potential, or an existing client, we'll call you.
Yeah.
And there's that, like, oh, I enjoy talking to this person.
Yeah.
Kind of feeling towards you. So there's some people that are just, you try and dig below the surface a bit, and they'll kind of blank.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, oh, I've been struggling with that. That's weird. But that long-winded, inarticulate sentence is a compliment. So
thank you.
But anyways, thank you so much for coming down to Biddeford, and thank you for the work that you're doing, contributing to the environment of Maine.
Thank you.
You've really got your finger on the pulse of that, like, vernacular and your taste coming together and producing that I think is I think it was, you said your dad was saying like,
Yeah.
well, there's these houses with white and black trim, and
Yeah.
what are you going to do now? Well, like, you formed like part of the new vernacular of Maine
Yeah.
that has come to be known as Maine, which is like,
Yeah.
that's a big accomplishment. You
Yeah.
know, you had a hand in forming the new identity of Maine in many ways in
Yeah.
the design field. So,
Well, I love knowing that there'll be something here when I'm gone that
Yeah.
I did. So
yeah, they'll stand for a long time, and hopefully the beauty embodied in them will make them that sustainable.
Yeah.
'Cause that beauty in it is speaks of the people that put those things there and the values that they had to put them there, and hopefully that's
Yeah.
the inarticulate way of passing on our values to the next generations and everything
Yeah.
to come. So,
I always hide a set of plans in each of my houses.
oh, really?
Yeah, and the newel post of the houses.
Oh, cool.
And I sign them, and just because, that's going to be demoed someday, and
Someday
somebody
Right.
will find it, and that'll be a cool moment. They'll
Oh,
see
look
how
at
it was
this.
done. Yeah.
We found Nazi coins in a wall
Oh
that
my
we
God.
demoed. So Caleb Johnson, his
Whoa.
first house, I think I'm getting this right, his first house here in Biddeford, I think he got it for like $40,000. I helped him like demo the walls and everything else.
That's-
And people, when they would build or renovate, they'd put coins in the walls for good luck. And there was like they just happened to have some German coins that at the time they weren't like Nazis. They were
Right.
just,
It
the
just
Nazi
was
party
yeah, right,
before they
right.
were like evil, which I guess they
Wow.
were evil at the time, but hadn't really
Yeah,
committed
right.
to the public persona
Yeah,
of
yeah.
murdering millions of people because of
Yeah.
their race and all that. But
Oh my God.
and also down here in the North Dam Mill, they bought a bunch of pipes and everything else from Germany before the war. And so if you go down into the basement, you see all these pipes with swastikas and stuff on them.
Oh my
It's kind of-
God. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, it's weird
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah. And then like when you demo, you find like people like write stuff
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the walls and,
Yeah.
and all that too.
Yeah.
Whatever. But anyways, thank you for coming down, and
Thank you.
really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you for the work you do, and look for Nicola's article in the, I think, March issue 2023 of Maine Home Design.
All right.
Check it out.